Hello, everybody. It is Seahawks Brendan Nelson, and I'm trying something a little bit different here. I just, literally 5 minutes ago, not even 5 minutes ago, finished my first playthrough of the recently released Dead Space remake, and I thought it would be fun to, now that I finished the game, do an impromptu, unscripted, just kind of off the cuff review here on video of the game to talk about how I felt about it and basically compare the experience to other survival horror games and compare the experience to the original Dead Space. So I'm just going to talk through my thoughts on the Dead Space remake, go through why I think it was a great game that was bordering on amazing, and why I actually think, as of right now, and obviously I just played it, so the experience is a little bit fresh. I think it might be the best survival horror game I've ever played. I think that the technological advances that they've made since the original Dead Space and other survival horror games that I played and really liked, combined with the really masterfully done way they remade this game, makes it the best survival horror game I've ever played. This review is going to be posted on YouTube. I'm going to post it on my main channel just so people can get an idea of some of the stuff I'm going to be doing. Future reviews that I do are going to be posted on my Twitch VOD channel. This is just something new that I'm going to try with the releases that I play in 2023. So any game that I play that got released in 2023, I'm going to do a review of after I finish it. So in a few weeks, I'll be doing this for Fire Emblem. So, okay, the Dead Space remake. So to give you guys some context about my experience with the original Dead Space, I played it back in, I believe, 2011 or 2012 on Steam. This was right after I got out of college and found a credible job. I finally had free time, and I decided to get back into video games because I hadn't played very many video games when I was in school because I was busy. And Dead Space was actually one of the first games I played. It and BioShock were literally the two first games I played, I think. So I really liked it. I thought it was a really good game. I really enjoyed it. It definitely introduced me to some stuff that I was not familiar with because, again, I hadn't been playing gaming. I hadn't been playing video games in general very much when the PS3 and Xbox 360 first came out. So I played that game and I was like, okay, wow, look at all this stuff they can pull off now. They couldn't have done this on the PS2, really. Excuse me. So this game, when I went into it, I was a little hesitant because I knew it was a remake of a game that I already played. And just so I would have a really good platform to compare things to, I replayed the original Dead Space the week before this game came out so I would know exactly what we're comparing it to. So, played through the original Dead Space, took one day off, and then started playing the new Dead Space. And I knew that it wasn't going to be a shot for shot copy. I knew it wasn't going to be just a graphical overhaul, but I was very interested to see how they were going to handle this remake because on some level, there is definitely an understanding that we can get away with just giving the old game a fresh coat of paint and maybe slightly better controls and getting out of there. I'm happy to report they didn't do that. This is a new game. It follows the same beats as Dead Space 1. I'll put it like that. It follows the same beats, and at each major checkpoint of the game, you've done the same thing. Like you're on the what's the name of the you're on that ship with a group of other people trying to do rescue or salvage on the Ishimura. You get on the Ishimura and immediately like, oh, you got to go fix the tram station. And then after you fix the tram station, you can use the tram, and then you go and you have to, a little bit later, you have to go to the hydroponics and kill a monster that's living in food storage. And you have to, later in the game, reset the asteroid defense system. You have to do all these things in both games. But the way in which you do it is very different. And the beats that the game takes to get to certain points has been altered enough to where it feels like you're playing a different game that just leads to the same spot. Just as an example, right at the beginning of the game, it differentiates itself from the first Dead Space by having Isaac show his face and talk. Isaac in the original game was a mute protagonist. Now, I'm not going to say if the mute protagonist is better or worse than a talking protagonist. That's subjective. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. But in the first scene, in the original Dead Space, the docking procedure to the Ishimura malfunctions. The ship crashes, and most of the crew dies before they even get off the ship. In this game, the exact same thing happens, except Isaac is voiced. So he actually says, "Here, do this emergency procedure and we can not crash so hard." He does that. More of the crew survives and gets to the Ishimura. So, because Isaac is a speaking protagonist, the game actually changes a little bit because of that. And I thought that was really interesting. So, you see things like this throughout the game. Like, for instance, there's a doctor character that you run into in hydroponics who you have to work with a little bit in order to kill the thing that's in the food storage. You have to work with her in order to stop all the poison gas getting pumped through hydroponics. Whereas in the first game, you didn't have that. You didn't have a doctor who was still alive and that you needed to work with in order to make things work. The asteroid defense system part, completely different. Shockingly different, actually. I really found this notable. In the first game, you just rebooted the cannons and then you jumped in a chair, kind of like the turret chair in on the Millennium Falcon in Star Wars, and you shot at asteroids for like 2 minutes while Hammond rebooted the system. In this game, you actually go out into space, use your pistol to aim at asteroids, and then hit a button to sync the turret with your pistol, and then you shoot the asteroids down. So it's completely different, but you're doing the same thing fundamentally, but it feels completely different. They completely changed the zero-G gameplay. You can actually fly around like you're in an Iron Man suit, which I'm not going to say it's better than the original, but it's different. It provides a new experience. The cutscenes are completely different, mostly because Isaac is now a voiced protagonist. The level design in many places feels the same, but it often differentiates itself, like the part where you go onto the USS Valor to get the Singularity Core. That part is radically different in terms of how you get to the Valor and then have to go through the Valor. These are things that were not in the original game. Now, the gameplay is fundamentally exactly the same as the original game. The original game, the gunplay is identical to this remake. If you liked the gunplay in the first Dead Space, you're going to like it here. You aim at things, you have the same basic weapons. Most people are going to have, weapons that they like. Everybody really likes the plasma cutter. This game has a plasma cutter, has a plasma rifle. It has the, what do they call that? The mine shooter gun, the one that shoots out like these line, what do they call that? The line, I can't remember what they call them. The contact beam, which those were the guns that I ended up using for the most part. There's a flamethrower. It's the same stuff. So the core of the gameplay in terms of running around, shooting enemies, needing to shoot them in the limbs to kill them has not changed at all. But they did add a couple new enemy types. Like there's this one enemy type that at first I thought was just some ridiculous bullet sponge because I literally would shoot him like 20 times with the line gun, which is really powerful, and it did nothing. First I thought it was just a stupid bullet sponge enemy designed to take all your ammo, but then I realized, oh, you can only shoot him in the arms. If you shoot him in the legs, it doesn't really do anything. So I looked at that and I was like, oh, okay, new enemy type. So you got to shoot him in the arms. A lot of the enemy types are going to be very familiar. You have the regenerator. You have the heads with the tentacles that shoot at you. You have the guys stuck in the wall who puke out heads that throw knives at you. Everything looks very different. The game looks amazing, by the way. There's definitely been a massive graphical improvement. It has some of the best graphics in any game that I've ever seen. The Ishimura looks amazing. The enemies look amazing. During those moments where I had the game running really smoothly, I was actually blown away on a technological level. So that stuff was all really handled well. I didn't want radically different gameplay. If I had to compare this game to another remake, it would be Resident Evil 1. Resident Evil Remake, which was originally released on the GameCube, eventually came to like PS4 and PC. that was a game that more or less played the same way as the original Resident Evil on the PlayStation. But they added rooms, they added puzzles, they added enemy types, they added some story segments, they added some characters, and they made it its own game, even though it's the same game. They rejiggered the mansion a little bit in a few areas. They found a way to make it its own game despite being the same game. This is like that. This is not like The Last of Us Part 1, where it's just The Last of Us, basically. This is Resident Evil 1. It's not quite Resident Evil 2, but I didn't really want it to be. I don't need the game to play completely differently. Like, I just wanted a game that played similarly, maybe a little bit better, and then found ways to enhance the experience. There are side missions in this game. There are three side missions in this game, and they add probably, if you put it all together, those three side missions, if you do them, you're probably adding 2 3 hours to the experience, so it just extends things out a little bit. There's a new system for items harvesting where some of the items are going to be in boxes, lockers, or rooms that are behind a wall. And as the story goes along, you will unlock security clearance to open those doors, open those chests, get those items, get that ammo, get the health pack, whatever. And that gives you incentive to backtrack. And that's actually one of the biggest differences about this game. Fundamentally, the Ishimura is the same ship. There are some additions, but it's the same ship. But unlike the first game, you can backtrack and you have reason to backtrack. In the first game, every time you boarded the tram to go to a new part of the ship, the game would basically move from one chapter to the next chapter, and the idea was, okay, you are in this part of the ship until you're done with your objective, then you go back to the tram, you go to another part of the ship to do your next objective. In this game, you can go anywhere in the ship that you want to as long as you've unlocked it. So you can go back to any area when you're at the end of the game. Once you've unlocked all 6 tram stations, you can go back and forth as many times as you like between all 6 different stations. And this is important because there are going to be areas in the game you cannot access when you first get there as part of the story. Boxes are not going to be unlocked, rooms are not going to be unlocked, lockers will not be unlocked, and you're going to have to go back when you get the right security clearance. So they've completely changed that because in the original game there was nothing like that. I like it better. They also made the upgrade system better. In the original game, you would have a lot of like dead spots on your upgrade matrices where you just had to you have to put a node there to get to the next node, but the node you're putting it in doesn't do anything. This game, every node does an upgrade. They've simplified things a little bit too, so like your suit controls the upgrades for HP, air supply, your stasis module, your kinesis module, instead of having those things be separated out and in different upgrade matrices. So that is, I think, a lot better. It was very annoying in the first game having to spend nodes on spots that were just empty. And basically, I think that sums it up really well. It's a game that plays well. It's a survival horror game. You're not supposed to have perfect control over your character at all times, so I'm not expecting that. They improved the stomping. You can now stomp at rapid paces, unlike the first game. I think the stomping is a little bit better in this game. Um, Despite everything I just said, by the way, I think this game is harder than the original game. In the original game, it was much easier to pin the necromorphs down with like a plasma rifle or any kind of gun in general. You put your plasma rifle on an enemy and you start pulling the trigger, you've got him, you're holding him at bay, and you can kind of dictate the terms until you run out of ammo of the exchange. In this game, you're firing at an enemy, he's still coming at you. So if you waited too long to start firing at him or you got taken by surprise, you're in trouble. In the original Dead Space, when I replayed it this most recent week, one thing I noticed was I had way more health items than I needed. I had so many health items, it was ridiculous. I had literally like almost a full page of healing items in my storage bin that I did not use throughout the playthrough. It wasn't until the end when I started using them, and I still had plenty left over when I was done with the game. And it's not like I had the game memorized and I knew everything that I needed to do. No. Um, I didn't remember most of the game from my playthrough that was literally over a decade ago. So it was like the game was giving you too much health. This game, not the case at all. I was constantly nickel and diming my way through the game trying to have enough health. I rarely had extra health items on my person at any given time. And I think that they balanced the amount of healing items you had much better in this game. Ammo, now in the original game, the balance of ammo was perfect. I always was having ammo problems. I don't think I ever really ran out in the original game, but I always had ammo problems, and I had to be creative sometimes. In this game, at first, they were giving me a lot of ammo, and I thought, oh, they blew the balance of the. They ruined. They ruined the balance of the ammo distribution. And then I kept playing it, and by about chapter 6, that wasn't the case anymore, and ammo became a problem. And ammo was a problem for the rest of the playthrough. So, for a survival horror game, that's perfect. You don't want to run out of stuff constantly, but you want to constantly be about to run out of stuff. And that's what was the case in this game. And I think they got the. I played it on normal, too, so it's not like I played it on some ridiculously hard mode. I played it on normal. I was constantly pressed for health items. I was constantly pressed for ammo. I think the game overall is a little bit harder than the first one, and I think that's a good thing. Um, yeah, I think that really kind of encapsulates all the things I can say about this game in the positive. I thought it was great. I loved it. It's borderline amazing, and honestly, it's a little early for me to commit to this. I feel like it's a Pantheon game for me. It just did everything right. It just did everything I was hoping that it would do, and it didn't really do any of the things that I was afraid of. I was afraid it was just going to be a flat remake. It was not. I was afraid they were going to be lazy with it because it wasn't the same crew making the game. They weren't. I was really, really impressed with pretty much everything they did here. The only negative I have to say, and this is to be decided whether or not this is even a legitimate criticism, I don't think the game ran that well on my machine, and I believe my machine is more than good enough to handle the game. When the game ran well, it looked beautiful, but I received frequent, not major, not in any way that made the game unplayable, but relatively frequent drops. I was playing the game on high, and I had a CPU overheat, which I believe is 100% a problem with the game, not a problem with my machine. I believe many other people have reported this problem. And I think that the game could use a hot fix to make sure it's not causing CPUs to overheat, because I did see that this is a frequent problem. And it might need to be optimized a little bit for PC so it runs better. That's one of the reasons why I'm not immediately going into another playthrough. I thought about going to get the secret ending, but I'm not going to do that right now because I want to see if maybe even if it takes like a year, I want to see maybe they'll patch the game and then I can go through it and get the secret ending. So we're going to put that on hold for now. That's the only real problem I had with the game. I mean, obviously, it's a shorter game. If you do everything in the game, you do all the side missions, you do all the backtracking, you unlock all the secret boxes and get all the gun upgrades and da 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 and da da da, you might be looking at 18 hours. Maybe on a harder difficulty, it would be more because you die more, but I think if you did everything, you would be looking at something like 18 hours. I believe I did about 16. So that's not that long of a game. And I mean, the storyline of this game is good, but it's relatively generic. So it's not like you have some incredible, compelling story to pull you through. But for the kind of game that this is, I can't really say too much bad about it. So yeah, Pantheon game, scale of 1 to 10, I'm giving it like a 9.3. Best survival horror game I've ever played as of right now. I would put it above, yes, Resident Evil 4. I would put it above my other favorite Resident Evil game, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. I just really liked it. So, thank you guys. I will be seeing you guys soon. You will see me posting a review of the new Fire Emblem game, kind of like this, in a couple of weeks. But those are my thoughts on Dead Space. Let me know what you guys think if you've had a chance to play this game. And I will be seeing you guys later on. All right, guys. I don't know how many people are in stream actually watching me do that, but I thought it'd be fun to go ahead and record that on stream. And yeah, now I'm going to run a few ads and I'm going to take care of some business. When I come back, I'm going to be doing Fire Emblem. Should be coming back around 10:15 maybe. Hope to see you guys there. Go Hawks. That was Dead Space. Really good game.